Well, Mountaineer Nation, that's about as bad as it gets. I mean to tell you, you can get blown out in the finale of a regular season, 59-10 or whatever the heck it was last year in Lubbock, Texas, but to face a MAC opponent, lose and lose your best player, perhaps to a season-ending injury, I really don't know what you can say to that that's going to feel like a silver lining. Thanks for tuning in for this unfortunately depressed edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports as the Mountaineers fall on the road to the Ohio Bobcats 17-10. And just, I'll say it, I did not see this. Truly, I did not. I did not buy into the people who were just afraid of, as I always like to chalk it up to, as the Bowden curse. People who, feel as if this program should always be on, the fence to, feeling lack of any sort of optimism going into games anymore. Just was not buying into, with all of the preseason research that I did on this Ohio team, even though going into last week, going on the road against Rutgers, and only making it a 3-point game, but as to me, Rutgers being one of the worst Power 4 programs, kind of showed where Rutgers was. So I think, where Ohio was. So I think what this just does for me is this confirms to me that West Virginia is not really a serious contender in the Big 12 Conference. That those 50-50 games that I was thinking about preseason that West Virginia could win, we're talking about Kansas, we're talking about BYU, dare I say it, Pitt, Utah, some of those games that you might have thought were maybe 50-50 when talking about the preseason Big 12 rankings and where they were in kind of like a power ratings order, that West Virginia may be in that final bottom tier, potentially. Down there with Cincinnati, down there with Oklahoma State, down there with UCF, Houston, so on and so forth. So I want to kind of go on the game. I think we can talk big picture, long-term ramifications later on in this contest, but let's kind of focus on the game in and of itself, which I would say is probably the worst loss that I can think of. I mean, well, let's just state the fact. It's the first time that West Virginia has lost to a G6 opponent since 2008 when the Mountaineers went down to East Carolina and lost in Pat White's senior season. Prior to that, it had been 2003 against Cincinnati at home. When they were a part of the American Conference before joining the Big East. And West Virginia hadn't lost to Ohio since 1949. So my goodness, you got to go back to the beginnings of the Cold War, really, that West Virginia, inexcusable to lose this game against this opponent. This had all of the makings of the upset whenever you think about it. Very slow start, especially offensively. In poor weather. You're kind of, it almost had like that Houston 2023 kind of effect, even though the crowd was amazing. West Virginia, Mountaineer Nation showed out, invaded Peden Stadium, looked almost 50-50 West Virginia to Ohio fans, but that really didn't matter. None of the West Virginia players, it felt like, really got up for this contest. Only 10 points, 205 yards of total offense, an offense that couldn't capitalize with points on 3 defensive turnovers, an opponent whose offense wore you down by owning the time of possession, especially in the first half, but also mentally because of the way that they picked up their first downs with their senior quarterback evading pressure all the freaking time and picking up first downs with his legs, and then just excruciatingly poor timed penalties and one pivotal missed call. This was just a complete botching by head coach Rich Rodriguez and this team. I'll put more of the blame on the offense than the defense, given the way the defense stepped up in the second half and still only holding, Ohio to 17 points, kind of where I predicted. But I expected the offense to play a whole lot better. So breaking it down, let's start with the first half. 5 of 6 West Virginia's offensive drives in the first half went fewer than 20 yards, fewer than 2 minutes of time possession, and Ohio ended up owning the time of possession 22 of the first half's 30 minutes. That's unacceptable. So unacceptable from an offensive standpoint of not playing complementary football to help out your defense, but defense not getting Ohio, getting them in stops, getting them off the field on third down. Excuse me, just the one-on-one tackling against Parker Navarro in this contest was dreadful, and that was one of my three keys to victory. Was talking about how could this linebacking core, defensive line. Let's just talk the whole defense. 18 carries, 87 yards for Navarro on the day. Very few times did a defensive lineman even get to Navarro, on the first rush. Didn't even get like a hand on him, a grab or anything. So the defensive line was just pinning their ears back, sending the dogs. He was able to step up in the pocket over a dozen times, avoid the rush, get out, and then West Virginia's linebackers were just not fast enough to keep up with Navarro. I would say in totality, the ones who were, he saw a really nice open field tackled by Kokora Tarnu at one point in time in this contest, but only West Virginia's secondary could keep up with Navarro, and they have pass coverage responsibilities, not run stopping primary responsibilities. So West Virginia's linebackers needed to be faster in this day. Where was Braden Siders? I mean, Chase Wilson did everything he could in this contest. Reed Carrico was kind of, quiet day for him as well, but they just did not make enough tackles on Navarro to win this contest. So, I counted in the official stats, Navarro picked up 7 first downs carrying the ball himself. 7. That's demoralizing. Just demoralizing for a defense, especially, the one in the very late in the game. But for the first half, he was just owning West Virginia in that regard. A very pivotal penalty was 3rd and 9 at the West Virginia 9, under 3 minutes to play in the second quarter when it was just 7-3. So Ohio had already missed its field goal by this point in time. Justin Harrington gets a pass breakup, but then, and like the camera work by the ESPNU crew on this day, missed a couple of passes by Jalen Henderson, and this was one we didn't get any sort of a shot on a replay. So didn't really get to see the holding call against Kokora Tarnu, so I can't really comment on it. Gave Ohio a fresh set of downs at the West Virginia 3, so then Ohio punched it in to make it 10-7. So just that Kokora Tarnu holding call gives you, Ohio a fresh set of downs, what you need to punch it in. So then, really probably the most demoralizing point in time of the day that I think just sent shockwaves through the West Virginia team, and this is what you can't afford as a West Virginia program for an entire season, is you go down to this piece of crap town, Athens, Ohio, play this piece of crap opponent, Ohio. And that's what nationally probably people are thinking about Ohio. Do you think the SEC or anyone in the Big Ten, again, who's worth 2 cents in the Big Ten thinks like, oh man, we have any sort of troubles with Ohio, or some of the, upper echelon ACC teams? Like, come on. That POS Jalen Thompson, horse collaring, face masking, just assault with a deadly weapon, if it could have been called, against Jaheim White. That was egregious. That was terrible. Thompson gets called later in the game on what would have been, an interception, but because Thompson mugged Rodney Gallagher, finally gets a late flag thrown to, save the interception. But Thompson just 2 times, really, 2 penalties called against him on this day, but to then take out Jaheim White, if that's a season-ending injury for Jaheim White, that's absolutely terrible. That's the way that this season has to go, because we're playing Ohio, and you lose him at that point in time. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I just don't really feel good for the future, if that's like the way that things end for Jaheim White for this season, what that means. I'll put it at that. Then to give up the 31-yard bomb to Chase Hendricks to put Ohio up 17-7 at the half. Darian Lewis getting called for that pass interference call that was 50-50. Kind of 2 wide receiver and defensive backs going at each other. And then, you give up that bomb like that. 3 big chunk plays, that one being the killer, to put them up by 2 scores going into the second half. So 4 defensive penalties against the Mountaineers in the first half, unacceptable, but more unacceptable is just the play calling. That just, you went 3 and out so many times, and because of the push up front. No push up front by the offensive line. Nico Marchiol was just erratic, just not in sync. I think the play calling was pretty terrible for the entire game. Let's talk about the move in the second half to Jalen Henderson at quarterback. I think it was justified given Nico Marchiol's poor first half performance and West Virginia's collective woes at running the ball. And this is no disrespect to Clay Ash, but it will be taken as such based on the way I say it. If West Virginia's best option at tailback is Clay Ash, then that's a problem. That's a problem from, I feel like, a general manager, roster management standpoint. And then what are you doing, Larry Porter and Rich Rodriguez, with your decisions at running backs? I mean, losing Jaheim White, injuries happen. So to count on him for an entire 2025 season, that he was going to be able to take all of these kinds of carries for an entire season without a second string running back would have been impossible. I mean, you would have had to have had 2 to 3 stable of backs. But what the heck happened with that Jalen Knighton academic, expulsion, if you want to call it that? Not academically eligible, so you were counting on him to be your number 2, so that's a problem. And then number 3, if Dior Hubbard, was your guy through that, where's he? Why didn't he get any carries for the second straight game? Sincere Bowers gets 1. Was his run last week not impressive enough? You get this Ty Edwards, who's supposed to be your C.J. Donaldson replacement from last year, but he's yet to carry the ball through 2 games. So why was there such a dependency on Clay Ash? That's a problem if Clay Ash is going to be West Virginia's starting back for the rest of the season. Oof. So the reason why you bring in Jalen Henderson, and you kind of saw it there, it was like 3 straight run plays up the gut. He looked good. I can only really judge him based on 6 plays, but pretty obvious that Jalen Henderson is just a step faster and a touch more agile than Nico Marchiol. So if that's the way that Rich Rodriguez wants to run this offense, then I understand it. I get it. That's kind of what I called for in 2021, of if your offensive line blows and, Jared Deggy's just a statue back there, and I feel like Garrett Green can at least help you out from a running standpoint. And quarterback run is this is the day and age of running quarterbacks in college football. You got to have one. Truly, you do. So if he is the better option at the quarterback position of running the ball, then I understand it, and that was a justified move. But, maybe if the Kokoratarnu holding call in the second quarter was bad, the Nick Cray holding call on 3rd down couldn't have been more poorly timed. 13 minutes to play in the fourth quarter. Henderson picks up the first down on a rush attempt, called back for holding. On his next play, he has to evade pressure outside the pocket, sacked for a loss. West Virginia has to punt. So you went from picking up a first down there with a quarterback who was, finally starting to get something going in the rushing department after 2 series. Nope, holding call. That's bad. Poorly timed. Now West Virginia had 2 more cracks at it in the fourth quarter. 8 minutes and 43 seconds, 2nd and 8 at the Ohio 37. The catch that was ruled incomplete by Cam Vaughn, that was just an awfully timed missed call that could have put West Virginia at the Ohio 3 and then punch it in and tie the game. So I had to look up this officiating crew, and this was the same officiating crew that called the backyard brawl last year. And anytime I see Michael Vandervelde it just seems like there's a quota sometimes that this crew feels as if they need to achieve so that they get more premium games. So hate that. I don't know who was it was either the back judge or the field, side judge or field judge. If it was Mark Graves, Robert Lewis, or Joseph Martinez who missed that call, had kind of the back view, so didn't get to see the better view, which was the front, to see where Vaughn was able to complete the catch, inbounds, toe tap. But to miss out on that, even after a review, staying with the call on the field, just that really, really could have used that, really needed that, and you don't get it. So all of this is just a cocktail of just nastiness as a West Virginia fan. Like, this game is one of the ones that you just want to vomit over. So then 3rd and 4 at the Ohio 41. Nico rushes for a first down, only for the ball to be called back because of Cam Vaughn doesn't know the snap count, isn't watching the ball, commits a false start. That's then the very next play, now 3rd and 9. Nico gets hit on the pass attempt, wounded duck, the ball's intercepted. So I don't put it much on Nico Marchiol. He's got to make a play there. West Virginia's got to pick up a first down. It's late in the game. But just his offensive line didn't really help him out once again for either quarterback on this game. So the offensive line just rough. So to get that turnover, didn't like that. But again, I understand it. You got to make some sort of a play. It doesn't really matter, because if you don't get it there, you get sacked. You're facing 4th and 12. Oh, well. But then Navarro picks up the necessary first downs to bleed the clock, the 3 minutes that really Ohio needed to win the game, picking up his 7th of his 7 first downs that he needed to, stepping around. I think it was Chase Wilson and Ashton Woods on a rush that he needed to pick up like 7, and he got 7. So just, man, you want to take your head to the wall on that. So ultimately, end of the day, let's talk about the good. I guess the good was West Virginia forced Parker Navarro into 3 interceptions. But why it just feels like a moot point is because West Virginia didn't score out of any of it. I mean, the one, I forget this, I think it might have been Darian Lewis, who did have the pass interference call, but then the interception run back. You just kind of wish that Braden Siders was out of his way on the return, because defensively was the only way West Virginia, it seemed like, was scoring touchdowns. Kind of felt like 2017 West Virginia, Texas, when Will Grier got hurt, that the only way for West Virginia to score points was if the defense did it. So asking a lot of this defense, they came through with 3 turnovers. That's Zach Alley's goal as a defensive coordinator. If you can get 3 turnovers as a defense, your chances of winning precipitously increase, and West Virginia's offense gave them nothing. So ultimately, I got to lay a lot of the blame at the head coach, who's the offensive coordinator. And this is probably where I'll face my first critique and anger from Mountaineer Nation of giving this take, because yes, I am criticizing Rich Rodriguez. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and just call out Neil Brown constantly as an offensive coordinator and not do it against Rich Rodriguez, even though he's the golden child, the prodigal son who's come back to resurrect the program out of Neil Brown's ashes. So he's got to face the same kind of criticism that Neil Brown does. Unacceptable for you to put together an offensive line that is not capable of going up against a MAC defensive line. I don't care that they won 11 games last year. So it's 50-50 call, but the decision that he made in the offseason to let go of offensive coordinator Matt Moore, who I really didn't think that he had any sort of a problem. I know that he really kind of fell into the luck of getting Zach Frazier, Doug Nestor, Wyatt Milam, 3 native sons who wanted to choose the Mountaineers. But progressively from 2022 through 2024, after really 2 embarrassing seasons in 2020 and 2021, Matt Moore was a pretty good offensive line coach. And then who would have known that, 3 guys, Tomas Remak, Kyle Altuner, who are both now starting at Virginia Tech, even though that's an 0-2 program, just lost to Vanderbilt by 3 scores. But in the case of Remak, like a 3-year starter you could have had on your defensive line. Who knows if Johnny Williams would have stayed too, and he was kind of the heir apparent at left tackle. And then Kyle Altuner, who was a 4-star player out of high school, was your best recruit out of 2 years ago's recruiting class. So he decided Matt Moore wasn't tough enough. Didn't think that he enforced that kind of hard edge mentality onto the program. So he lets him walk. Those 3 guys go out the door. And so far, the replacements that West Virginia's found at offensive line are just not good enough. So that's just unfortunate. Very little in the play calling department from Rich Rodriguez worked once Jaheim White went without an injury. But what I'm just really, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but what I'm really concerned with is this running back core. Like, again, if Cannon Katzer's hurt, he's hurt. I get it. But to not get Ty Edwards involved, I don't even care if it's just 3 yards in a cloud of dust like he plays for Iowa. Like, use him. Utilize him. He fought against the NCAA to get his eligibility. Why is he not getting carries if he's supposed to be your short yardage back and you couldn't run the ball? So you're going with these, guys who are more like 5'10", 5'11", 180 to 190, and the best one that you're putting out there is Clay Ash. So the other thing, and like you might call me a Nico homer or favor him or whatever, that was the first instance in which it really took Nico 3 quarters to get going, and I don't know why. I think I just got to give oh man, I'm going to sound like Neil Brown here. Credit to Ohio. I think what happened is they looked up their film from the Cure Bowl last year, in which they played Jacksonville State and really studied that offense. Some of the players, too, that are now a part of West Virginia played in that contest. But we know by that point in time, Rodriguez was off to Morgantown, establishing himself as West Virginia's head coach. But there were still some players on that team who played in that game. And Ohio had some film from that contest to analyze their play calls, formations, what they tried to do. Because that looked like a defense that kind of knew what was coming. Or they weren't really fazed by what West Virginia was running in this contest, even with comparable or lesser talent on Ohio's defense versus West Virginia's offense. It looked better. So you don't capitalize. The other thing, kind of goes unreported. I don't want to not report this for the game. Love to know the injury situation of Jaden Bray. Kind of was like a quiet thing that he was carted off the field late in the 4th quarter. If you're losing your potential number 2 wide receiver and your starting running back in a loss to a MAC school, this might be the worst loss that West Virginia's suffered. I feel like maybe going all the way back to when West Virginia's lost to Temple 20 some years ago, because that's bad. Just the ramifications from that. So I know I'm kind of doom and gloom here. Maybe that's too much, and I don't want to pour it on too much for out there. Some people who are temperamental, trust me, it's taken me like 24 hours, really, to get to a point where I feel like I can come on here and like talk about it, because I have not wanted to talk about it for 24 hours. Just, again, never thought that could have been possible. You have now just given fuel for fodder for all of West Virginia's opponents for the rest of the season. And unfortunately now, the numbers for the, ESPN predictions and all that jazz now have West Virginia not winning a game the rest of the year. Put as much credence into that as you want, whatever you think. But this isn't the NFL where if you finish 1-11, you get the first overall draft pick. You suffer. And suffering in today's world of college football is not suffering like it was in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. You can fall and fall quickly. And right now, again, I don't want to say like this is the end of the world here, but this is not a positive sign for this program that was already suffering because of what we've suffered for the last 6 years of Neil Brown. This is what I was afraid of. Not necessarily this contest. It would be the week. I kind of thought we would get RMU, a steady, little bit of a climb the next week through Ohio, and then everything came down to September 13th. So I'm having this show potentially a week early. I don't feel good the rest of the way because of all the numbers that spoke to where Ohio ranked in the greater, scheme of college football. I don't care, FBS, just in totality of FBS, to now West Virginia can't beat them. Even though it was a road contest, don't care. There's not really a whole lot of excuses that I buy for West Virginia losing that contest and giving that kind of effort. I mean, played hard, especially in the fourth quarter when they, started to pick up some first downs and started to get some things going, but too little too late through the middle half of the game. Second quarter, the second quarter and through third quarter was just ugly. That was an abomination. Blech. So, how you feeling, Mountaineer Nation? Should I kind of just pause there before I talk about any bigger picture ramifications of what this might mean? I think it might just be worth just saving for right now, because that's the beauty of college football, is on to the next week. You can lose to an Ohio, or in the case of a Notre Dame last year, you can lose to a Northern Illinois and then run the table the rest of the way and go to a national championship game. But again, when you lose your best player offensively, potentially to season-ending injury, maybe even your second best player and your number 2 wide receiver. Now, I mean, West Virginia is still only, I think, a 2-point favorite. What I checked this morning, or still a 2-point dog at home to Pitt. So this kind of goes to show what Vegas says, is it's going to just fall on us as Mountaineer Nation. So really, who I feel the worst for in this contest is all of the people who spent all the money to go all the way out to, Athens, Ohio, fought through the traffic to get to the parking, to that small stadium, and then to suffer from the Ohio fans, who I'm sure were just completely obnoxious, to win that game, and then just try and rub it in West Virginia fans' faces. So, having been through that at Maryland in 2021, I don't wish that on anybody. Didn't suffer that much heckling, I feel like, from Pitt fans in 2022 or 2024 after the game. Kind of got out of there as quick as humanly possible. But Maryland was pretty nasty. So anybody who suffered through that coming back, that's who I really feel for the worst. You just hope that, these players can really take that to heart. And this is where the rubber meets the road of what kind of balls do you have? What kind of inner motivation do you have for this season? Are you playing? This is what you would question from a Neil Brown coach team. Are you playing for the NIL check, or are you trying to, play for the name across the front of the jersey? That's what'll tell, and that's what these coaches are going to need to inspire. And these players, once back in the friendly confines of Milan Puskar Stadium, are going to have to show out next Saturday. Really, really going to have to step up and prove it. Otherwise, this season, again, don't want to get too far ahead of myself right now because it hurts. But again, anything can happen, but it's at the edge of the knife. It's really right at that point in time with everything that's coming up this week. So going to be a pivotal week for this Mountaineer football program, heading into the backyard brawl at home against Pitt. So, I just don't feel good right now in the short term, and then the long term, I think we just need to save and hit pause right now. So that's where I'll end it. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it, even though I have to do shows like this. I'll be back later this week to talk about and preview the Backyard Brawl. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. Love to know your comments, good, bad, or indifferent. If you like this video, please like it so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube, and love to have you as a subscriber to my channel. Thanks for tuning in. Let's go. Spot the ball. Hail West Virginia.